Recently, we put out a full length episode analyzing the 2004 Pistons and their special championship run in what was one of the biggest upsets in NBA history. In conjunction with that full length podcast episode, I thought we could re examine some of the 2003 2004 season as a whole and try to have some fun that way as well. The other day, I randomly ran across an NBA preview for the 2004 season on ESPN's archives by Mark Stein, in which he shares things that he wants to see in the '04 season that didn't have to do with Kobe, who was wrapped up in legal off-the-court troubles, and LeBron, who was entering his rookie season and with the attention of the entire world on him. By the way, we know how those two stories turned out anyways. LeBron was awesome in year one, winning Rookie of the Year, and Kobe and the '04 Lakers were covered in detail on our podcast episode, a season that saw them make and lose the finals amidst drama and contention. So let's hop in the NBA time machine and discuss 7 of these takes and see the related wormholes it sends us through. I want to see if anyone can score 30 points a game this season. Well, we all know how much philosophies, strategies, and innovation over the last 20 years has caused a massive scoring boom. In 2024, we had 3 players score 30 plus points per game, and 14 averaged 25 plus points per game. That was a different story in 2004. T-Mac was close once again, as he was the leading scorer at 28 points per game on the dot, taking over 23 shots per game. T-Mac's 28 points per game would have been 4th in 2024. What's crazy is that 0 players outside of him average even more than 25 points per game. KG and Peja Stojakovic each averaged 24.2 points per game, and then Kobe at 24. Paul Pierce, the other guy that Mark Stein predicted to crack 30, was 5th, averaging 23 points per game. '2004 saw a lot of big names in new places. Mark Stein was looking forward to seeing Karl Malone, Gary Payton, Latrell Sprewell, Gilbert Arenas, and then an interesting mention of Jason Kidd in their return to face certain teams in their home arenas. Karl Malone and Gary Payton signed with the Los Angeles Lakers in pursuit of that elusive championship ring. Malone missed out on both of the Lakers' return trips to Salt Lake City. Karl Malone hurt his knee in late December and was sidelined until mid-March. As for Gary Payton and his return trip to Seattle, the Lakers lost 111 to 109, but he played well, going for 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Latrell Sprewell linked up with KG and the Wolves in a 4-team trade after he spent 5 seasons in New York. Spree's revenge game in New York was a masterclass. With the Wolves cruising their way into MSG, Latrell went for 31 points in a 6-point Minnesota win. Gilbert Arenas, after 2 seasons in Golden State and winning Most Improved Player in 2003, cashed in and signed a 6-year, $60 million contract to be the face of the Wizards. Gil led his Wizards back to Golden State on March 26, 2004. The Wizards were bad, and the Warriors weren't much better this season. Washington lost 99-78, with Arenas scoring just 11 points on 3 of 10 shooting. Now, you may be asking why Stein mentioned Jason Kidd here since he was still a New Jersey Net. Well, after the Nets and Spurs played in the 2003 finals, the Spurs very nearly signed Jason Kidd after they beat him in New Jersey. Kidd mentioned making a verbal commitment to join the team when he visited them, which included efforts from Coach Pop and Tim Duncan. Kidd ultimately changed his mind and re-signed with the Nets on a 6-year, $103 million contract. The Nets made their return trip to San Antonio on January 21st. Like Sprewell, Kidd had a great game in his quote-unquote revenge game, 21 points on 47% shooting, but like Arenas, his team got smacked. The Nets lost by 23. Mark Stein mentioned wanting to see sustained health for Shaq to spruce up the MVP race that appeared to be Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan won the 2002 and 2003 MVP awards and was entering his age 27 season in 2004, and the Spurs were of course coming off of a championship. It seemed like there was a possibility that Duncan could three-peat. A 31-year-old Shaq played 67 games in 2004 as he missed a couple weeks in late January with a right calf injury. He was still hyper-efficient, shooting 58%, but between the new-look roster giving him less touches and all the drama between him and Kobe, he only averaged 21.5 points per game, the lowest of his career, and did so on a career-low 14.1 shots per game. He finished 6th in MVP voting. Dirk, the other player mentioned by Stein, only won 4 total votes, finishing tied for 10th with Sam Cassell and Baron Davis. Stein also mentioned Jason Kidd, but he finished just 8th. So the question is, who would challenge Tim Duncan? Enter the big ticket. KG was nearly our unanimous league MVP, taking 120 of the 123 first place votes, behind averages of 24, 14, and 5, and leading the Wolves to the best record out west. It was enough to supplant Duncan, who finished 2nd, and obviously still had a killer season, averaging 22 and 12, though he too missed 13 games, while KG played in all 82. Ironically enough, Duncan finished 2nd in MVP despite not getting a single first place vote. Jermaine O'Neal, who averaged 20 and 10 for a 61-win Pacer team, finished 3rd in MVP voting and got 2 first place votes, while Peja Stojakovic, who averaged 24 and 6 and shot 43% from 3, got the remaining vote. Stein mentions how he wanted to see how Phoenix would fare as, quote, a team with expectations compared to 2003. What does this mean? The 2003 Suns were one of the most fun teams in the NBA. Behind a 24-year-old Sean Marion, a 25-year-old Stephon Marbury, rookie Amari Stoudemire, and a young Joe Johnson off the bench, the Suns outperformed preseason expectations and finished 44 and 38, and even stole a couple of games off the eventual champion Spurs in the first round. In 2004, people were now pegging the Suns to carry the momentum and win 45 to 47 games. Instead, this was a year from hell. Amari played in only 55 games, and the Suns were 12 and 22 at the turn of the new year, when the Suns made a blockbuster deal with another team that was disappointing in 2004 in the New York Knicks. They traded Marbury, Penny Hardaway, and little play backup center Cesare Trubansky to New York for a spoil of players including Howard Eisley, Antonio McDyess, Charlie Ward, and a couple other players and future first-round picks. The Suns effectively threw in the towel on the season, finishing just 29 and 53. Something new and fresh was needed to rejuvenate what was still a young and promising core around Marion, Johnson, and Stoudemire. And that brings us to Mark mentions wanting to see who is going to wind up in 5th place in the Western Conference in 2004. The West during the early 2000s was hyper-competitive. Talent and dominance in the league skewed heavily towards that conference. 5 of the 6 teams with the best preseason odds to win the championship were out west. This is why seeing which team slipping to 5th was incredibly intriguing, as that would signify that that team would need to go through a Western gauntlet of 3 straight rounds against higher seeds without home court just to make the finals, despite not being perceived as markedly worse than the other teams entering the season. The Lakers, Spurs, Kings, Wolves, and Mavericks were all in relative punching distance of each other. Mark thinks it would be the Wolves. They had the worst odds of the 5 Western teams mentioned, and up to the season, that belief was warranted. The Lakers and Spurs had each won championships recently, while the Kings and Mavs had also made deep playoff runs to the conference finals in 2002 and 2003, while the Minnesota Timberwolves hadn't made it out of the first round even once in the KG era. Well, that was all flipped on its head in 2004. As mentioned, the Wolves, to many surprise, claimed the 1 seed, won the conference with a 58-24 record behind a top 6 offense and defense, as well as MVP Kevin Garnett. The best team in the big ticket era gets the Wolves all the way to the Western Conference Finals, and even a couple games away from a finals matchup against those Detroit Pistons. Now, the team that did finish 5th, and the reason I was teasing that in the Phoenix Suns take, is that this was the Mavericks, who were just 4 games above 500 at nearly the halfway point of the season. They did finish 32-14 over their final 46 games to reach 52 wins, but it wasn't enough to get home court in the first round. Stein jokingly said he wanted to see Dallas score 150 points and give up nearly as much in at least one game. Obviously, there is some exaggeration there, but not too much. The 2004 Mavericks had the #1 offense in the league, led by Dirk, Steve Nash, Michael Finley, Antoine Jamison, and Antoine Walker, but they had the 26th ranked defense. The Mavericks, the odd team out in that 5-team scramble for home court, lost to the Kings, who had the #2 offense in the first round in 5 quick games. I bring up the Suns and the Mavericks in this video because their respective seasons led to this. For the last take that I thought was interesting and one that we can dive into today before maybe in another video looking at some other takes, as he mentioned some of the key rookies in 2004. Now, as mentioned, it goes without saying that LeBron and Carmelo Anthony were the 2 best rookies in 2004. LeBron joined a Cavaliers team that won 17 games in 2003, and despite bringing back largely the same roster, they very nearly make the playoffs in 2004. The Cavs were as low as 11th in the Eastern Conference in late February, and then went on a furious run behind LeBron James. They got as high as 6th in just a few weeks before finishing 9th on the year, just 1 game behind Boston for the 8th seed. Over the final 2 months of the season during their scramble for the playoffs, LeBron averaged 22, 5, and 6. Carmelo was also incredible. He joined a Nuggets team that also won 17 games in 2003, but Denver made a bevy of offseason moves to complement their young rookie, including signing Andre Miller, Earl Boykins, John Barry, and Vashawn Leonard to bolster their backcourt, all of whom played significant minutes. Melo averaged 21, 6, and 3 on the season as the Nuggets won 43 games before losing to the Wolves in round 1. But how did those other 2 rookies that were mentioned by Mark Stein fare? Well, Darko only played 159 total minutes for the Pistons, appearing in just 34 games and never scoring more than 6 points in a single game. Bosh, also just 19 years old, averaged 12 and 7 and shot 46% and finished 5th in Rookie of the Year voting as the Raptors improved by 9 wins from the year prior and even flirted with a playoff spot themselves through early March before falling out of the race completely. The other bright rookie was, of course, Dwayne Wade. 16, 4, and 5 on 47% shooting as he finished 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. Who was 4th? That was Kirk Heinrich, who averaged 7 assists and shot 39% from 3 for the Chicago Bulls. Now, what did you think of some of these 2004 takes in retrospect? What was interesting to you, and what do you want to see next? I think it would be fun to do some of these more time capsule videos in the future, go back and see what takes were made in the moment, and then see again what related wormholes those kind of take us through, see how those turned out, see if they were correct or incorrect, and what ended up happening in the end. Because as always, it's always fun to hop in the NBA time machine here on Once Upon a Dribble.